These are the same tactics the establishment powers used to try to scare the British people out of voting for change also. It didn't work there, and it's not going to work here. Call me Mr. Brexit.
And the 2016 Oscar for the Best Actor goes to Donald Trump for his portrayal of Mr. Brexit. So, Donald Trump won the US presidential election of 2016 despite the fact that right up until the polls closed and even afterwards, the pollsters, mainstream media, journalists, paid pundits and so-called analysts, financial markets and the betting markets all had concluded that Hillary Clinton was going to win. How did he do it? And why did nearly every analyst miss it? Well, because they were busy number crunching the polls when the election was never about the numbers, as I repeatedly pointed out that this election, as was the case for Britain's Brexit, was, for want of a better word, delirium. Yes, that's right, collective delirium, which is why it can't be fathomed through rhyme and reason, fact or fiction, truth or lies. It's all a blur as Trump mania took hold. After all, delirium is the exact opposite of logic and reason, and Donald Trump, as the ultimate alternative reality figure, was able to bring about a state of delirium in those sections of society usually tuned out of mainstream politics, and the more he ranted and raved, the more delirious sections of the electorate became, until they literally marched insanely into the polls to mark an X next to the billionaire's name who was supposedly a man of the people. Now, it's very difficult to represent delirium at work through reasoned analysis. However, I did manage to at least partially paint a picture of what was happening in the following two videos that you can watch afterwards. Of course, no one's going to admit to this, but I saw it and even felt it, and perhaps also partially succumbed to it towards the end of the campaign, the final week when we were all starting to buy into Donald Trump's fantasy alternative reality world, where a billionaire is the man of the people. Donald Trump is not the first politician to effectively con the voting public. There have been many others in the past who have managed to fire up the crowds into a delirious state of frenzy. Delirium is a powerful political force. Obama too brought the crowds, at least in 2008, close to a delirious state into believing his preachings of change. What change has he brought? Nothing's changed, but they soaked it all up. So Donald Trump played his part perfectly as Mr. Brexit, and now we await to see what shape his next role will take as Mr. President. Early signs are it will be a watered down version of Mr. Brexit. Instead of times 10, it's more like times 25%. Delirium is why the likes of the pollsters, Nate Silver and the New York Times, amongst thousands of others, keep getting election forecasts badly wrong, because delirium cannot be quantified through reason, and delirium is far more common state than most will ever admit to. For instance, we see it in the religious fanatics of across the world. At least 90% of human beings are susceptible to delirium inducing religion, and of course we see it all the time in the market manias that inflate asset price bubbles to far beyond the underlying reality, with investors pumped up into a delirious state, losing all touch with reality, unable to recognise that the bubble is about to burst. So the Brexit factor delivered what was to virtually all an invisible 4% swing from Hillary Clinton to Donald Trump in all of the key swing states, which was the conclusion of my analysis of 25th of September, They're actually built on a year-long analysis in the lead up to the EU referendum that warned that the polls were wrong and that Brexit would win, and so would Donald Trump. And my video analysis of 2nd September also confirmed my expectations that Trump would win. Whilst my most recent videos before the vote mapped out what would happen in terms of the electoral college of Trump gaining 108 electoral college votes from 9 key Brexit swing states that virtually all were saying Hillary would win, a so-called firewall that never existed. Brexit converts into a 4% swing to Trump from Hillary, which converted into the following table of 9 Brexit swing states, those where Hillary was leading by less than 4% in the state polls in the run-up to election day, which meant that Donald Trump would win these Brexit states as the anti-establishment candidate and thus the election. Adding 108 Brexit swing states to Donald Trump's accepted by most tally of 191 electoral college votes put Donald Trump on a winning 299 against 239 for Hillary Clinton, which proved remarkably accurate given how volatile electoral college results tend to be, with Trump actually winning 290 electoral college votes. And now we come to America's Brexit night. This was the state of play going into the close of the polls. Firstly, the betting markets. The chart says it all. The betting markets were strongly discounting a Hillary Clinton win, not just on Brexit night but for the duration of the election campaign. Trump's best price was 2.9 on the day before the first debate. However, as the chart shows, you could have easily picked up a price of 6 or better for several weeks, even on the days of the polls closed, which actually stood at 6.6 1 hour before the polls closed. For instance, if one placed a £100 bet on Trump at 6.6, and if he won, that would have resulted in a profit of £560 plus stake, whilst a £100 bet on Hillary would have yielded a profit of just £16 if she had won, which illustrates that the betting markets were very strongly discounting a Hillary Clinton win and thus were set up for a huge shock. So, following my forecast conclusion of 25th of September that Trump would win, I started to accumulate a betting position on Trump, having learned the lesson from Brexit that Trump as the underdog meant that the betting price would significantly widen closer to election day, so I thus scaled into my position. The initial price was not so good at 3.05, but I knew to expect better prices over the following 6 weeks as transpired. I added more on the 27th of September and again on the 8th of October. In fact, the worse Trump standing in the polls got, the more Trump bets I bought. By the 7th of November, Trump was trading at 6.4 again, and it was my intention to buy some more Trump, but I delayed acting on my decision for a few hours, and so the price I got was only 5.6, which left a bitter taste in my mouth because I should have bought Trump at 6.4. So by election night, about an hour and a half before the polls closed, I saw Trump trading at 6.4 again, and I just could not resist adding to my now sizable position, so that this was my 8th and last bet on Trump at 6.4 about 1 hour before the polls closed. My betting record illustrates two key aspects of my analysis. That is, firstly, I put my money where my mouth is. If I forecast XYZ is going to happen, then I'm going to win or lose money on the basis of that outcome. And there is nothing that focuses one's mind more than having one's own money on the line, which is why I tend to get obsessive on a particular market for a period of time rather than flip-flopping all over the place. I focus on one market at a time because I want to win money on it. And you can't do that if you're jumping around like a rabbit all over the place. Election focus, block everything else out. My focus is to maximize profit on this election. The second point is that my Trump bets show that my consistent view was that Trump would win, right from the 25th of September through to the hour before the polls closed. Something to remember when you read or watch something online, ask yourself, is this guy putting any of his own money at risk or not? As for the stock market, the Dow closed sharply higher for a second day as Hillary's Wall Street backers discounted her victory of the bought and paid for candidate for president. Whilst my consistent view had been that the Dow would target a trend to new all-time highs before the end of this year, specifically targeting 20k, and any drop due to Trump winning would prove to be temporary, as had been the drop in the FTSE following Brexit, whilst the opinion pollsters continued to strongly discount a Hillary Clinton win, with the average of polls standing at plus 3.2% against plus 1.8% the day before. But I was certain that Trump would win, which is why I put another bet on Trump. And the polls-based analysts continue to show Hillary as the clear favourite to win, such as Nate Silver's 5:30 crap site, which an hour before the polls closed was forecasting a 71% probability for Hillary winning the election, up from 67% the day before, against Trump trailing on 29%. Though Nate's forecasts were at the lower end, as the likes of the New York Times were giving Hillary at least an 85% probability of winning, as this summary table shows just how clueless the academics and the mainstream press truly are. You know this is paid content. People actually pay for this crap. Look at Moody's analytics model for 332 electoral college votes for Hillary against 206 for Trump. Same for the New York Times toilet paper, and then there are the vested interest academics such as Princeton, all totally clueless.
This is going to be Brexit plus.
America's Brexit night, as it played out in the betting markets, started at midnight UK time as the polls closed, with Clinton trading at 1.17 and Trump on 6.6, and as the votes were counted by 1 AM, Trump's odds widened to 12, with noises coming out of the Trump's camp that they did not expect to win. I recall hearing former Republican President Bush stating that he had not voted for Trump either, and the exit polls were saying that Hillary had won the election. A repeat of Brexit night. And then things started to get interesting around 1.5 hours after the polls closed, as the results started to stream in, with many of Clinton's so-called firewall states being too close to call. By the polls plus 2 hours, Trump had halved his odds to 5.4 from 12 of an hour earlier, though still the mainstream press reporting was assuming that Hillary Clinton had won, as they focused on 27 million angry Hispanic voters voting for Clinton, and it's only around the polls plus 2 hours and 15 minutes when the fools in the mainstream media began to contemplate that Trump could win, as the betting market odds narrowed to 2.72 to 1.66, and within another 10 minutes near parity, with Trump taking the lead by 2 hours and 45 minutes after the polls had closed on 1.92, with the trigger being Trump's projected win of Ohio. And then by 3:30 AM, it's effectively all over for Clinton, as Trump takes Florida and sees Hillary's odds explode to 5.7 against 1.21 for Trump, a complete reversal of where the candidate stood when the polls closed 3.5 hours earlier. Also of note is that the Dow futures are now down near 800 points by this time. The next couple of hours after the polls closed to plus 4 hours are a train wreck for Hillary Clinton, as she loses the election, despite the mainstream media fools still talking about Hillary's few paths to victory still available. The betting markets are clear that it's all over by 4.5 hours after the polls had closed. And that's the end of the US presidential election 2016, and just as was for Brexit, the stock market reversed sharply higher, which was contrary to the expectations of most who assumed that the market would crash if Trump won, when Instead, it closed over 400 points higher on Wednesday the 9th of November. Ensure you are subscribed to my YouTube channel for more in-depth analysis and detailed trend forecasts.
Call me Mr. Brexit.